Hello, viewers and subscriber. Welcome once again uh, my new screencast. The screencast is the continuation of the screencast number 25. That's the screencast as we did last years, but we are continuing the further implementation, and now we try to share with you those who are new in our channels. You can go to the channels and look for the previous ones and follow our channels. That's the idea. So what we already had our channels, like you see in my channels, like we have many REST API or RESTful API implementations based on the different backend server and based on the different technology. I mean the backend server with the different SQL database and then a different non-SQL database. SQL database, meaning that the MySQL, PostGIS, and then Oracle or other relational database. And non-SQL database, that's what I mean, the the MongoDB, Cassandra, Redis, Elasticsearch, and so on and so forth. That's the database that we are talking about. And then Redis, GemFire. If you see the channel, there is a screencast. There is a Cassandra based REST API implementation, MongoDB based REST API implementation, Elasticsearch based REST API implementation, and then Redis based REST API implementation. Those are implementation different with different use cases. But for use case, maybe the use case will be different or different idea and different concepts. That we are trying to our best to share with you how can you implement those APIs, the REST APIs based on the use cases with the standard and generic approach. Meaning that as a professional way, how can you implement those APIs or those customs API or use case based API. And that's why we try our best to share with you, and you can also share your ideas and concepts and into the channels, write down your comments, and then that will help really a lot to make together the better and better implementations or better developments. And the discussion is look like that. Those who are really new for the Spring and Spring Boot, we already started the Spring Boot basic program, basic tutorial, and also the Java basic tutorial, but we didn't have enough time to implement to make the recording or more or make a screencast with them. But you can continue with us, and you can get and then the respective times you get all the screencast that you need. But for the fresher or beginners, then they can Google it, and then they can start with the Spring Boot with the how can start how can you understand the basic annotation of Spring Boot. Of course, we already had some screencast about the Spring Boot annotations, the basic annotation. That's what we needed for the REST API implementations for the different cases, like for the MongoDB case, Elasticsearch case, and Redis case, and Cassandra case. And then on the NoSQL world, MySQL and PostGIS based, even though in the Oracle based these implementations. That's you can follow, Google it, and then you get the basic idea, and then you can start our implementations, because this implementation that I said is really the professional way to handle the implementation. That's I mean, and that's you can do it if you follow the from very beginning level to the end level. I believe it's really works. It's really help to your daily developments. So you see the implementation that's we already have it. You can go which technology, which database server, or your SQL or non-SQL backend server, or which you are using. You can any of them, you can take it and you can follow that one, and then do your professional works and already your research work, or already your daily development works. So you see the here, and also we have some screencast with the Postgres, and then it's all about the Spring Boot, Spring Data with Java, and then Postgres, MySQL, Postgres based implementation. You can get him, even though we have a plain JDBC implementation, the old school implementation, you can go this one, and they have the consuming the REST API with different REST clients like REST template, REST client, AJAX, or simply HTTP client, depending on the which front-end framework you are trying to use it, then depending on the REST client implementations. So today we try to implement the further implementations for the GemFire. If I go to the GemFire ones, then you see that there is a 2 screencasts already there. So we are trying to continue the 25 to the further implementations for implementing the REST clients. So we already started the projects to implementation. If you see our previous example, previous screencast number based on the Elasticsearch and MySQL and Cassandra, and then Postgres, and then Redis, and then now today we try to implement the GemFire functionalities. How can you start the GemFire implementations? How can you start? How can you build the projects? And how can you configure the projects? And then how can you implement your models and domain models? I mean, entity models. I mean, then how can you professionally structure your projects, complete structure? That's I said. What I am doing or what we are doing is a professional way to do, not the hello world one, not very simple uh, operations or simple functionalities. It has a very specific use case, and we try to cover all the specification or the requirements for the projects, and then implement the step by step. I will show you every step when I start the development. So let's recap in the presentation part that we have it. So we will go is how can you start the project, how can you generate the projects, and how can you import the projects in your respective IDE as like Eclipse and IntelliJ. That's I will show you, and start the development. So let's go back to our presentation that's we are talking about. So this is the presentation we try to continue, and that is the REST and RESTful API microservice implementation, testing, external configuration, and deployments. So this is one really most important topics. How can you start development? That's everybody knows, and then testing with the different JUnit testing, also your REST API client testing. For our case, we try to use the Postman, Google Postman testing tools. Is really flexible and dynamic testing tools. You can test your REST APIs, even though you can also use the SOAP UI is a very good tools, and other REST clients testing tools. You can use it. The browser-based testing tool, you can also use it. And external configurations, that's I mean, how can you configure your applications externally? I mean, a Spring Boot profiling concept. Doesn't matter with the Spring Boot application.properties files or application.eml files. That depend on which approach you will take. That's I said I will show you every step for when I start the development or when they start the configuration. And deployment means when your development done, your testing is done, then configuration is done, and then you try to deploy the applications into your client machines, or hundreds of machines or thousands of machines, any part of the world. Just you need to change your external configuration files, your IP address and the port number, and your jar files. So that means jar file means we try to build the application as a standalone jar files, and thus you just copy and paste the jar file into your Artifactory, or take things from Artifactory and put it in the installation department, and then you can install the jar files with the respective changes or overwriting the external configuration file. That's the idea for this screencast. You can get it clearly what I mean end of the screencast. So that means if you work as a big company or middle-sized company, then that company had let's say have some installation department, IT department. IT department means the installation department, and some department has a testing department, and then your department is a development department. And this is the big company. pictures like that way. So the developer did development and do the release for the test department. They do the testing, and then installation department, they will configure the installation